The grand court of the Zorathian Empire was lit with silver fires and floating lanterns that shimmered in the air. Nobles from across the galaxy stood in a great circle around the crystal floor, their eyes on the long red path that led to the throne. It was the day of the choosing, a tradition that had lasted for thousands of years. The young Princess Alira was to stand before the gathered suitors, and from among them one would step forward to claim her hand. Alira walked slowly into the center, her gown of deep blue silk trailing behind her. Her silver hair fell like water over her shoulders, and her bright green eyes were calm, though her heart was not. She had been told all her life that she was different from the other princesses. She was quieter, less charming, less willing to flatter. She spoke her mind, and in the eyes of the Empire's nobility, that was not a strength. Today, however, was supposed to be different. The Emperor, her father, had summoned warriors, princes, and commanders from 10 star systems. They were here for one reason: to win her hand, form an alliance with the Zorathian Empire, and strengthen their power. The Master of Ceremonies stepped forward, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Suitors, step forward when your name is called, and make your pledge to the princess." One by one, names were called. The first was Lord Venkar of the Drovian fleet, a towering alien with plated skin and glowing eyes. He stepped forward, bowed to the Emperor, looked at the princess, and then stepped back without a word. The next was Commander Sorith of the Kiran Navy. He glanced at her, gave a polite nod, and turned away. Then came General Trevak, Prince Morin, Admiral Phelan. Each one looked, hesitated, and stepped back. Alira's chest tightened. The whispers began to spread among the nobles like a growing storm. She has no charm. Not worth the trouble. Too plain for a princess. Their voices were not loud, but she could hear them. She kept her face still, though every rejection felt like a small cut. The Emperor's gaze grew darker with each refusal, and her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. The ceremony dragged on, and the space between suitors stepping forward grew longer. More than half of them didn't even bother to walk close to her. They gave their excuses to the Emperor instead, claims of prior promises, political complications, or simple disinterest. When the last name was called and the final suitor stepped back, the court fell silent. No one had chosen her. The air felt cold against her skin. She kept her hands folded in front of her, refusing to let them see her disappointment. The Emperor's voice was hard when he spoke. "Is there no one here who sees value in my daughter?" The silence stretched on. Then, from the far end of the hall, a figure moved. The crowd parted slightly as a man in dark blue uniform stepped forward. He was not as tall as the towering alien warriors, and his build was lean rather than massive. His hair was dark, his eyes steady, and his steps were confident but unhurried. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "A human?" someone said with surprise. Humans were rare in Zorathian space. Their homeworld, Earth, was known more for stubborn independence than for political marriages. They were considered unpredictable, even dangerous, because they often acted on instinct instead of tradition. The man stopped before the Emperor, bowed respectfully, and then turned to the princess. "My name is Liam Hart," he said, his voice calm but clear. "And if the princess will have me, I choose her." The hall froze. Nobles looked at each other, unsure they had heard him correctly. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You are not of our kind. What claim do you have to stand before her?" Liam met his gaze without flinching. "None but the one I make now. I came to represent Earth in these talks, but when I saw the princess, I saw someone worth standing beside. The others turned away." "I will not." Alira blinked, caught off guard. In all her life, no one had spoken to her like that. Not as a political prize, not as a duty, but as a person. The Emperor leaned back on his throne, studying the human. The nobles murmured their doubts, some scoffing openly, others curious. After a long pause, the emperor said, "Our laws allow any suitor to prove themselves, but you will face the trials as they are written. If you fail, you will leave this court and never return." Liam gave a small nod. "Then I'll see you at the first trial." The moment held a strange energy. No one in the hall could understand why a human would risk so much for a princess that no one else wanted. Some thought it foolish, others thought it reckless. But a few began to wonder if perhaps this was the start of something none of them had expected. And as the court began to disperse, Alira found herself glancing at the human again, her thoughts unsettled. For the first time in years, she felt the faint spark of curiosity, maybe even hope. The palace courtyard was alive with sound the next morning. Servants hurried to prepare the training grounds, engineers set up strange mechanical obstacles, and guards polished their weapons. The first trial was about to begin, and the entire court was eager to see the human fail. Princess Alira stood on a high balcony, watching the preparations. Her eyes searched the courtyard until she found him. Captain Liam Hart was speaking with a Zorathian guard, his tone casual, his posture relaxed. He didn't look nervous, which was strange. Even the strongest warriors usually showed some tension. Before the trials, Alira's mother, the Empress, stepped beside her. "He is human," she said softly. "Do you know what they say about humans, daughter?" Alira glanced at her. "That they are dangerous." The Empress's lips curved slightly. "That they are unpredictable. They do not follow the paths we expect." She paused. "That can be a strength or a curse." Down in the courtyard, the Master of Trials announced the rules. The first trial is the test of strength and skill in combat. The challenger must defeat 3 opponents, each one stronger than the last. Failure to continue means failure of the trial. Liam stepped into the arena, wearing simple combat gear. He carried no heavy armor, only a short energy blade in his right hand. His opponents were already waiting, 3 towering Zorathian warriors in gleaming silver armor. They smiled cruelly, as if this would be over in seconds. The crowd gathered, many leaning forward in anticipation. No human had ever taken part in these trials. Most believed Liam wouldn't last past the first round. The first opponent charged. He swung a massive blade down toward Liam's head, fast enough to split stone. Liam sidestepped, letting the blade crash into the ground. Before the warrior could lift it again, Liam stepped in close and slammed the hilt of his blade against the warrior's side where the armor was weakest. The Zorathian grunted in pain, stumbling. Liam didn't waste time. He swept the warrior's legs and sent him crashing to the floor. The crowd gasped. The first round was over in less than a minute. The second warrior stepped forward without waiting. This one was faster, with twin short blades and a spinning style that kept opponents off balance. Liam ducked, blocked, and moved constantly, refusing to meet strength with strength. He used the arena itself, slamming his opponent into a wall, kicking sand into his face, and finally hooking a foot under the warrior's ankle to trip him. One sharp strike to the neck with the flat of his blade, and the second warrior fell. Murmurs ran through the crowd now. A few were impressed. More were annoyed. The third warrior was the largest yet, a champion of the Imperial Guard. His armor was thick, his weapon a heavy hammer that could crush bone with one blow. He didn't rush in like the others. Instead, he circled Liam, waiting for the human to make a mistake. Liam stayed light on his feet, breathing slowly. He didn't attack recklessly. When the warrior swung, Liam moved just far enough to avoid the blow, letting the hammer smash into the ground. He waited until the warrior lifted it again, then darted forward, striking at the same weak joint in the armor over and over. It was slow work, but after a dozen hits, the joint sparked and split. With the armor weakened, Liam feinted left, then slid right, slamming his blade into the exposed side. The warrior roared, dropping to one knee. Before he could recover, Liam pressed the blade to the warrior's throat. Silence fell over the courtyard. The Master of Trials raised his voice. "The human has passed the first trial." A wave of disbelief rolled through the crowd. Some clapped reluctantly. Others muttered about tricks and dishonor, but the rules were clear. Liam had won fairly. From her balcony, Alira felt a strange rush in her chest. She had expected him to lose. Part of her had even wanted him to, so he could leave, without more humiliation. But seeing him stand there, calm and steady in victory, she couldn't deny the spark of respect forming inside her. Liam glanced up toward the royal balcony. Their eyes met for a brief moment before he turned away to leave the arena. Later, in the quieter halls of the palace, Alira found herself crossing paths with him. He was alone, heading toward the guest quarters. She stopped him without really thinking. "You fight differently," she said. He smiled faintly. "Humans don't always win by being stronger. Sometimes you just have to be smarter." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why are you doing this?" "Truly?" Liam's eyes softened. "Because everyone else walked away. I don't like seeing someone left alone like that." Alira didn't reply right away. Her people didn't speak like that. There was always some hidden motive, politics, trade, power, but his words felt plain, honest. Before she could speak again, a palace guard appeared, announcing that the second trial would take place the next day. Liam gave her a small nod and walked away. As she watched him leave, Alira realized she was looking forward to tomorrow more than she should. Something about this human unsettled her, and yet she wanted to see what he would do next. The palace gardens had been transformed into a place of quiet danger. Pathways of polished stone wound between tall glass walls, each section holding strange devices and puzzles. The second trial was called the Test of Mind, and it was said to be harder than any battle. Warriors could train for years and still fail, because strength alone meant nothing here. Princess Alira stood with the Emperor and Empress on the viewing platform. She tried to hide her curiosity as Captain Liam Hart entered the maze. Unlike the first trial, there would be no direct fighting today. The challenge was to reach the center and retrieve a small crystal sphere, using only logic, awareness, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Several nobles stood nearby, some already shaking their heads. "The human may have passed the combat trial by luck," one of them muttered. "But this will end him. Our puzzles are not made for outsiders." Liam stood at the entrance as the Master of Trials explained the rules. There would be no guidance. He could not backtrack once. He chose a path. The walls would shift without warning, and the puzzles would grow more complex the further he went. When the signal came, he stepped inside. The first section was a long corridor with 3 glowing gates at the end, red, blue, and green. A panel. Beside them displayed alien symbols. Liam crouched down, running his fingers over the carvings. After a few moments, he smiled faintly. "Color code based on temperature," he muttered to himself. "Red's the highest, but in this pattern, high means unstable." He pressed the blue gate's control panel, and the gate slid open, on. The viewing platform, Alira leaned forward slightly. Most challengers guessed wrong on the first puzzle and wasted time. The human had chosen correctly in less than a minute. The second section was harder. A floor of shifting tiles moved beneath his feet, each one lighting up in a different pattern. Some tiles dropped away entirely if stepped on. Liam paused, watching the rhythm, counting intervals. 4 seconds safe, 2 seconds collapse, he murmured. He adjusted his steps, moving only when he was certain of the timing. In the third section, thin beams of light crossed the corridor, forming an invisible net. Touching any of them would trigger a lock and force a restart. Liam removed his jacket, folding it into a bundle. Carefully, he tossed it across the path, watching which beams flickered as it passed. Then he used the shadows to find a path through, sliding sideways between the beams with a precision that made some of the watching guards exchange glances. Alira's heart was beating faster now, though she didn't want to admit it. He didn't move like someone guessing. He moved like someone who understood. The final section before the center was the most dangerous. A group of mechanical sentinels blocked the way, their eyes glowing gold. They were programmed to fire stun, bolts at anything that moved too quickly. Most challengers tried to fight or run, and most failed. Liam crouched, pulling a small reflective badge from his belt. Slowly, he tossed it to the side, letting it clink against the wall. The sentinels all turned their heads toward the sound. In that moment, he slid along the opposite wall, staying low and moving only when the machine's gaze shifted away. It took him several minutes, but he reached the center without a single shot fired. The crystal sphere rested on a pedestal. Liam picked it up, holding it in his palm for a moment before slipping it into his belt pouch. The Master of Trials announced his success. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some clapped, some whispered in disbelief. Back on the platform, the Emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. "He is not just clever," he said in a low voice. "He is patient." Alira didn't answer. Her gaze stayed on Liam as he exited the maze. He looked up at her for the briefest moment, giving a small nod before disappearing from sight. Later, she found herself walking through one of the quieter palace corridors when she saw him again. He was standing near an open window, looking out at the distant stars. "You make it look easy," she said, stepping closer. "It wasn't," he replied with a small smile. "Your people are clever. They don't just test strength. They test how someone thinks when they're under pressure." "And what did you think?" she asked softly. Liam shrugged. "That most problems have a way through if you keep your head and pay attention. Sometimes people fail because they try to rush." Alira hesitated before speaking again. "The last suitor who took that trial, he failed at the second gate. It took him an hour to get that far." Liam looked at her, his expression calm. Then maybe the trial wasn't his problem. Maybe he was thinking too much about winning instead of understanding what was in front of him. Something in his words stayed with her even after he left. She was beginning to realize that Liam didn't treat these trials as obstacles for pride or glory. He treated them like promises, each one a step closer to proving that he truly meant what he said on the first day. And for the first time, Alira wondered what it would mean if he actually won them all. The palace training grounds had been turned into a guarded battlefield. This was the third and final trial, known as the Trial of Loyalty. In the old days, it was only a simulation, an arranged event where the suitor would protect the princess from actors pretending to be assassins. But everyone in the court knew it could turn dangerous if something went wrong. Captain Liam Hart stood in the middle of the open field, wearing light armor and carrying a short blade. He had passed the first two trials, surprising everyone. But now the rules were different. In this one, failure didn't just mean losing the right to marry the princess. It could mean injury or worse. Princess Alira stepped into the field beside him, dressed in ceremonial white. She was told she had to remain in the area until the trial ended, no matter what happened. She glanced at him once, noticing how calm he looked. "You understand the point of this trial?" she asked quietly. "Protect you at all costs," Liam said simply. "I think I can handle that." Before she could answer, the signal horn blew. The gates around the field opened and 5 masked figures rushed in. They moved fast, dressed in dark armor and armed with curved blades. Liam's instincts took over. "Stay behind me," he said sharply. The first attacker came from the left. Liam sidestepped and struck the man's wrist, sending his weapon spinning to the ground. The second came straight for Alira, but Liam blocked him with a swift kick to the chest, forcing him back. The crowd in the stands roared in surprise. Most suitors would have focused on defense, staying close to the princess. But Liam moved like he was reading the fight 2 steps ahead. 3 more attackers closed in. One fainted high, another went low, and the third tried to slip past him entirely. Liam turned into the strike, using his shoulder to knock one off balance, then spun and used the flat of his blade to slam another to the ground. The third barely got within reach before Liam hooked his arm and twisted, sending him stumbling away. It was then that something strange happened. From the far side of the field, a 6th figure appeared. This was not part of the arranged trial. Alira could tell immediately. His armor was different, darker, and his movements were sharper, more dangerous. The Emperor's expression hardened in the royal stand. "That one is not ours," he said quietly. The figure drew a long blade and charged. Liam reacted instantly, pushing Alira back and stepping forward to meet him. The clash of their blades rang through the air. This attacker was faster, stronger, and clearly aiming to kill. Alira's breath caught as the fight became a blur of steel. Liam blocked a downward strike, then ducked under a slash aimed at his throat. He moved with pure focus, using not just his blade but his environment, kicking dust into the man's face, using the edge of the nearby wall for cover. Still, the assassin pressed harder. A quick slash cut across Liam's arm, drawing blood. He didn't slow. "Stay down!" Liam called over his shoulder to Alira. She wanted to argue, but she saw the assassin's eyes, cold and fixed entirely on her. She froze, knowing that if she moved, she'd make things worse. Liam feinted left, drawing the assassin's strike, then pivoted right and drove his elbow into the man's ribs. The assassin staggered but recovered quickly, swinging his blade in a deadly arc. Liam caught it on his own blade and, with a sharp twist, wrenched the weapon free. The fight ended in one final move. Liam slammed the hilt of his blade into the assassin's helmet, knocking him unconscious. Guards rushed in, dragging the masked man away. The Master of Trials stepped forward, clearly shaken. "The challenger has completed the trial." But the crowd wasn't focused on the announcement. Everyone was talking about the unexpected attack. Alira walked toward Liam, her heart pounding. "That wasn't part of the trial?" she said quietly. "No," Liam agreed, breathing hard. "But I wasn't about to let him get near you." She looked at the cut on his arm, then at his face. "You could have been killed. Better me than you," he said simply. Those words stayed with her as they left the field. Later, in the safety of the palace halls, she found herself thinking about them again. All her life, she had been surrounded by people who saw her as a piece in a political game. Liam had stepped into that arena not for power, not for wealth, but because he refused to stand aside when she was left alone. And now, after 3 trials, she wasn't sure if she feared or hoped for what might come next. The great hall of the Zorathian palace felt colder than usual. Tall pillars of silver stone rose toward the high ceiling, and every step echoed against the polished floor. The emperor sat upon his throne, the empress at his side, while a half-circle of nobles and council members surrounded them. At the center of the floor stood Captain Liam Hart, facing them all. He had been summoned less than an hour after the 3rd trial ended. The air was heavy with expectation, but not the kind that welcomed him. The emperor's voice broke the silence. "You passed the 3 trials. By our laws, you have the right to claim the princess's hand. But before we speak further, you will explain what happened in the arena today." Liam met his gaze steadily. "The first 5 were part of your test. The 6th wasn't. Someone used the trial as a cover for an assassination attempt." Murmurs rippled through the nobles. One council member stepped forward. "And how do we know, human, that you were not working with this so-called assassin? Perhaps you staged this to appear heroic." Liam's jaw tightened. "If that were true, I wouldn't have taken a blade to the arm. I wouldn't have risked losing my life in front of half your court." The emperor studied him carefully, his golden eyes unreadable. Do you have any idea who sent the assassin? Not yet, Liam said, but I'd wager it's someone who didn't want me to finish these trials. His gaze swept across. The nobles and a few shifted uncomfortably. Or someone who didn't want the princess alive to see the end of them. Alira, who had been standing beside her mother, felt her stomach tighten. It was one thing to suspect court politics were dangerous. It was another to hear it spoken aloud. The Emperor's gaze flicked toward her for a moment, then back to Liam. Whether you speak truth or clever lies, the fact remains. You have passed our laws. I cannot deny you your right to choose. The words made the hall stir with unease. Some of the nobles openly frowned. Others whispered in disbelief. The Empress spoke then, her voice calm but firm. The question is not whether he may choose her, but whether she will choose him. All eyes turned to Alira. She felt the weight of every gaze pressing on her, but her attention was on the human standing in the center of the hall. She remembered the first day when he stepped forward while all others stepped back. She remembered the way he fought, not for glory, but to keep her safe. She took a breath, then spoke. He has earned the right to stand here. I will not deny him that. A sharp murmur ran through the crowd. The Emperor's expression remained steady, but something in his eyes shifted. Perhaps approval, perhaps warning. Very well, the Emperor said. But there is still the matter of the union. If it is to be, the announcement will be made at the feast in 2 nights' time. Until then, the human eye is to remain within the palace. Guards will be posted. No one comes or goes without my knowledge. The meeting was dismissed, and the nobles left in clusters, whispering behind jeweled hands. Liam turned to leave, but Alira stepped into his path, in the quiet corridor outside the hall. They don't trust you, she said. Liam's mouth curved slightly. I noticed. You should be careful. The trials are over, but the real danger might just be starting. That's fine, he said, looking at her directly. I didn't come here because it was safe. There was something in his voice that made her pause. It wasn't arrogance or pride. It was a plain statement of fact, the same way someone might say the sky was blue. Why? She asked quietly. Why step forward when no one else did? He didn't answer right away. Because I've seen what it's like to be left standing alone. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. The words struck deeper than she expected. She watched him walk away toward the guest wing, and for a moment she forgot about the stares and the whispers. That night, she couldn't sleep. The palace felt different now, tense and watchful. Somewhere in its endless halls, the humans slept, or perhaps stayed awake, planning for whatever came next. She didn't know which thought unsettled her more, the idea that he might fail or the possibility that he might succeed. The great feast was a spectacle that only the Zorathian Empire could create. Long tables stretched across the golden hall, covered in plates of exotic food and crystal glasses filled with shimmering drinks. Music drifted through the air from a group of alien musicians, their instruments glowing softly as they played. Nobles from across the galaxy sat in neat rows, their eyes drawn again and again to the human sitting at the head table beside the princess. Captain Liam Hart wore formal Zorathian attire for the first time, a dark tunic lined with silver thread. He looked almost like one of them, though his human features still made him stand out. Whispers followed him wherever he turned. Princess Alira sat at his side, feeling the stares as much as he did. She kept her voice low so only he could hear. Half the people in this room want to see you fail tonight. Liam smirked slightly. And the other half? They're waiting to see if you'll survive it. Before he could respond, the Emperor rose from his throne at the far end of the hall. The room fell silent. 2 nights ago, the final trial was completed, the Emperor said, his deep voice carrying across the hall. By our traditions, the one who passes all 3 trials may claim the hand of the princess. The human captain, Liam Hart, has done so. The announcement sent a wave of noise through the crowd, some applause, some sharp murmurs of protest. The Emperor raised his hand for silence. But before the union is confirmed, this court must witness his worth one final time, not by our arranged trials, but by the challenges of this night. Liam felt every gaze lock on him. "And what challenge is that?" he asked calmly. The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "To stand among us as one of us, to speak, to answer, and to defend your choice before this court." It was not a physical test. It was something far more dangerous, a public trial of words, where one wrong answer could destroy him. A tall noble from the left table rose first. "Human," he said, his tone sharp. "You are not of our blood, not of our traditions. Why should you stand beside our princess?" Liam met his gaze. "Because I'm not here to replace your traditions. I'm here because I saw someone who deserved to be chosen, and I won't pretend it was for politics or gain. It was for her." There was a stir in the hall. The noble sat down, clearly unsatisfied but unable to argue against the plainness of the answer. Another noble spoke, this one older, his voice heavy with suspicion. "What can a human offer the Empire? Strength? We have it. Wealth? We own the richest worlds. What do you bring that we do not already possess?" Liam took a breath. "You have strength, wealth, and power, but you treat them as if they can never be lost. Humans don't think that way. We know things can be taken from us in an instant. It makes us value loyalty more than anything. And that's something I'll bring. Loyalty to her, and to anyone who stands with her." A murmur of approval ran. Through a section of the hall, though many still remained silent, Princess Alira's gaze stayed fixed on him. She could see it. He wasn't trying to win them all over with clever words. He was simply speaking what he believed. The questioning went on. Some nobles tried to trap him with political riddles. Others asked about human history, and a few threw insults thinly disguised as questions. Liam answered them all with steady patience, never raising his voice, never stepping away from the truth. But then, just as the final question seemed to pass, a sharp sound echoed through the hall, the crack of something metallic snapping. Liam's eyes caught the movement instantly. One of the towering ornamental pillars above the musicians had come loose, and it was tilting forward, straight toward the princess's table. There was no time to think. Liam lunged from his seat, pushing Alira back as the massive structure crashed down. The impact shook the hall, shards of stone scattering across the golden floor. Guards rushed forward, but the danger had already passed. Alira sat on the floor where he had pushed her, her heart pounding. Liam stood between her and the fallen debris, breathing hard. The Emperor's gaze swept the scene. His voice was cold, but it carried something else beneath it. "It seems tonight has reminded us that danger does not always announce itself." No one dared to speak against Liam after that. The feast continued, but the mood had changed. Some still doubted him, but none could deny he had acted without hesitation to protect the princess. Again. Later, as the hall emptied, Alira walked beside him in the quiet corridor. "You keep doing that," she said softly. "Doing what?" he asked. "Putting yourself between me and whatever's falling." He gave her a small smile. "Habit." And though she didn't say it out loud, she found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, this habit of his was one she wanted to keep.